Hi there, John McAdams here with you again. Thanks a lot for joining me in this video where I share ballistic gel test results for a bunch of 375 H&H Magnum factory loads. So first, I'll shoot this Hornady load with the 270 grain SPRP bullet. I will also shoot another Hornady load with a 300 grain DGX Bonded projectile. Of note, this is a bonded DGX bullet, not the old unbonded DGX. I'll also shoot a load from Federal, 300 grain Swift A-frame, another load from Federal with a 300 grain trophy bonded Bear Claw projectile, a load from Barnes with a 300 grain TSX bullet, and finally, I will also shoot a custom hand load from Hindershots Ammunition with a 300 grain North Fork Semi-Spitzer bonded soft point bullet. So we have a broad spectrum of different bullets with different constructions from various companies that I'm going to test in this video. We'll see how they compare to each other. Now, I would like to thank Wiedner's for donating the 270 grain Hornady ammo, and thank Barnes for donating their 300 grain TSX ammo to use in this test. I paid full retail price for everything else. So we'll see how it all performs. Now, I shot this test using my Ruger Safari Magnum rifle, 24-inch long barrel, 375 Holland and Holland Magnum. I shot all of this stuff into gel blocks 50 yards away. Now, due to their similarity in ballistics, you can translate these results I'm going to show you for the 375 H&H over to the 375 Ruger as well, to a certain extent. Those two cartridges can shoot identical bullets at very similar velocities, plus they also have the same SAMI spec twist rate. I'll talk in a little bit more detail for each individual load about how it would apply to the 375 Ruger as I go through the video. Now, as always, I measure all velocities with my Garmin chronograph. So I'll start with the 270 grain Hornady ammo. I'll shoot it into the gel, do a brief analysis of how it performed. Then we'll go down the line with each different type of ammo. Then I'll wrap with a comparison of how each load performed. So let's get shooting. Okay, let's see how this interlock performed. Nice short neck, massive wound cavity. Lots of fragmentation, very wide wound that is not very long. It tapers off pretty quickly. Bullet penetrates into the second gel block, comes to a rest there between 22 and 23 inches of penetration. It looks like that bullet really expanded as well. So I will pull it out and get you some more info. Okay, this Hornady load is shooting a 270 grain bullet in excess of 2,700 feet per second. That is the lightest and highest velocity load used in this test. That's also the only non-bonded or non-copper bullet I used. As you'd expect, we have massive expansion with lots of fragmentation and shorter penetration for that load. This load penetrated the shortest distance out of everything in this test. And actually, as a matter of fact, I didn't take a video of it, but I shot this stuff into gel again off camera because I was surprised at the lack of penetration I saw from it. Penetration was nearly identical with that second shot, 22.75 inches for the first shot, you see here, and just 23 inches for shot number 2. Now, both bullets had similar expansion and weight retention, but if you're curious, the smaller and lighter bullet is shot number 1. Both bullets massively expanded to a gigantic diameter. They also shed a lot of weight in the process. This explains the lack of penetration, though, because bullet expansion is inversely related to penetration. More expansion generally means less penetration, vice versa, all other things being equal. We'll see the opposite of this on display later in this video. Now, Hornady does list this bullet in their Dangerous Game series line of ammo. Probably it's great on thin-skinned dangerous game like lion or leopard. I'd also feel okay shooting a crocodile with it. I think it would also be great on antelope, but of everything I shot in this test, it would be my last choice for use on thick-skinned dangerous game like buffalo or hippo. Now, Hornady offers this same 270 grain SPRP bullet in a factory load for the 375 Ruger 2. Advertised velocity is 40 feet per second faster for the Ruger, probably very similar ballistics in real life, maybe a little slower for the Ruger if you're shooting it out of a rifle with a 20-inch long barrel like a Ruger guide gun. So what you see here for the 375 H&H, probably very similar to how this bullet would perform out of a 375 Ruger. This is actually the only bullet in this test I have not hunted with. Leave a comment. Let me know if you have any hunting experience with the 270 grain Hornady bullet. I'm curious to know how it performed for you and what you took with it. All right, now let's see how Hornady's other lead core expanding bullet offering for the 375 H&H in the 300 grain DGX Bonded bullet performs. All right, here's how the DGX Bonded performed. Nice short neck, pretty darn impressive wound cavity, but there's a surprising amount of fragmentation, pieces of the bullets radiating outwards from the main wound track. Bullet penetrates into the second gel block, but as you can see, it starts to angle upwards, and it exits the gel block here, right going from the second into the third gel block. It flew off, and I did not recover that bullet. So with that in mind, I shot it again. Here's the results. Okay, here is the second shot. As you can see, these gel blocks are much darker than what I normally use. Every time I remelt and reuse these gel blocks, they get darker and darker. They still work the same, you just can't see into them as well. So I use these dark gel blocks as spares for a situation like this. Now, as you can see, there's the wound cavity. Bullet looks like it angles downwards a little bit in this gel test. Instead of going up, it goes down, and the bullet goes to right about there, right around 33 inches of penetration. And as you can see, it's also flipped around backwards. So I will pull it out, get you some more details about it. Penetration is much better with this bullet. It went about 10 inches deeper into the gel. That's not surprising. This is a bonded bullet. It's also going quite a bit slower than the 270 grain Hornady. Interestingly, the maximum diameter of the wound cavity is similar to the 270 grain Hornady bullet, but the DGX Bonded wound cavity is much longer. Overall volume probably larger for the DGX. Now, the first shot did angle out of the top of the gel, like you just saw. I did manage to catch shot number 2, though. Now, I shot that second shot into the darker gel blocks. In my experience, performance is identical with the darker blocks. It's just much more difficult to see what the wound looks like in those darker blocks. Those blocks are good for measuring penetration and evaluating bullet weight retention and expansion, but not the wound cavity itself. So with this in mind, I want to point out that the wound measurements are from shot number 1. All of the bullet data is from shot number 2 that I recovered. Now, my guys in South Africa have used these bullets on buffalo in their 375 H&H client rifle for years. Actually, a lot of antelope too, but mainly buffalo. This is actually one of the easier 375 caliber bullets to obtain in South Africa. A lot of the others are much more difficult to find, especially these days. In any case, our clients have killed literally dump truck loads of Cape buffalo with this bullet. It works well in real life. Results seem to mirror what we see here in the gel. Adequate penetration, a good sized wound, and good expansion. Expansion was just under 2x. Penetration isn't the greatest. It did veer off a little bit on both shots, which isn't ideal, but performance I would still rate as good for this bullet. Now, we use these Hornady bullets because their performance on buffalo was acceptable and they were available. We have since changed to another bullet I also shoot in this test. You'll see why later in this video. In the meantime, let's see how the 300 grain Swift A-frame performed. Okay, let's take a look, see how the 300 grain Swift A-frame performed. Nice short neck. There is our wound cavity. I'd say it's a medium-sized wound that is very long. And then the bullet continues to penetrate through the first gel block in a laser straight line through the second gel block, comes to rest right there, 36 inches of penetration. I'll pull that bullet out and get you some details about it. Check out that deep straight line penetration. That is awesome. That is exactly like we like to see. It is very likely to reach the vitals of a Cape Buffalo from a variety of shot angles. The good news is that even though these bullets penetrate really well, they also will not normally exit from a buffalo, even from side-ons. So don't worry too much about over-penetration with them, but you still need to be careful. Now the wound is a little bit smaller for the A-frame than was the case with the DGX, but not bad at all. Expansion virtually identical to the DGX Bonded 2. Weight retention also excellent, just like we like to see. There is a reason why the A-frame is so darn popular for buffalo. I killed a buffalo with a 286 grain A-frame from my 9.3 by 62 many years ago. I was very pleased with how it performed. Now, in addition to this federal load I shot here, Swift makes ammo for both the 375 H&H and 375 Ruger with the 300 grain A-frame. And you can, of course, hand load it for both cartridges. Not too much else to say about how this bullet performed. Let's see how the 300 grain trophy bonded Bear Claw did. All right, let's take a closer look at how the trophy bonded Bear Claw performed. Nice short neck. There is our wound cavity. This is not a gigantic wound cavity, but this is typical of a robustly constructed projectile, and it's not small either. And more than anything else, this wound cavity is long, and it extends through almost the entire first gel block. And the bullet penetrates and penetrates to right about there, just shy of 38 inches of penetration. Pretty impressive. Looks like a beautiful mushroom on this bullet as well. I'll pull it out, get you some more info about it. Once again, very deep straight line penetration. The wound is a little smaller, but still similar in size to the A-frame and the DGX Bonded. Bullet penetration is outstanding though, the best we have seen so far. It also penetrated almost like a laser in close to a straight line through all that gel. This is another outstanding bullet choice for buffalo. This is an excellent bullet that provides a good mix of deep penetration combined with bullet expansion. The bullet has a bonded front core with a solid rear shank. Now the trophy bonded Bear Claw has gone through numerous iterations over the years. The current one is outstanding, very stable. I have killed game with the 4.58 caliber trophy bonded Bear Claw from a 4.58 Win Mag with good results. My friend Fernando killed a Cape Buffalo with this 300 grain 375 cal version of the Bear Claw in 2023. That was a strongly quartering shot on a buffalo at close range. The buffalo fell down after the shot, got up. We found it dead in a thicket less than 50 yards away a couple minutes later. The bullet did not exit. Only Federal makes factory loads with the trophy bonded Bear Claw. It's also only available in the 375 H&H. You can technically hand load it for either 375 cartridge, but these component bullets are tough to find in 375 cal. All right, now let's talk about this Barnes load. I'll tell you up front, I had a lot of trouble with this one, and I had to shoot gel blocks with it on 4 separate occasions before I finally caught one. Now, catching these bullets is harder than it looks, especially for deeper penetrating loads like the 375 H&H and this Barnes load in particular. These blocks are only 5 to 6 inches square on their face. So you need to hit close to the center of the block at very close to a perpendicular angle. Even then, the bullet will easily exit out one of the sides if it deflects too much while penetrating into a third or a fourth gel block. That was what was happening with this stuff, and it would make it into that third block and then veer out the top or one of the sides. I eventually had to set it up with a bunch of other gel blocks surrounding the third block to catch the bullet when it exited. And as you'll see here shortly, that's what happened here. All right, let's take a closer look at how the Barnes bullet performed in the gel. Nice short neck. Here's our wound cavity. Not too dissimilar in size from the ones made by the other 375 bullets in this test. Of note, there is one piece of copper I can see right there. Looks like not much else fragmentation-wise from this bullet. Bullet penetrates through the first gel block, goes into the second gel block, but things start to get a little squirrely here. As you can see, the bullet starts to angle downwards. It also angles away from the camera. Makes it through the second gel block, enters the third gel block. Now, as you saw in the video I just showed you, there was another gel block that was clear immediately behind the second gel block. And then this dark one was right next to that one behind it, further away from the camera as we're looking at it. So the bullet penetrated a little bit through that third gel block, but then angled out the far side of it, entered this dark gel block right here, as you can see. Then it penetrated and close to a straight line, but still angling a little away from the camera through that one before coming to a rest right there. Looks like about 46.5 inches of penetration. So I'll pull that bullet out, get you some more info about it. That was a frustrating experience. The bullet would penetrate in a straight line through the first block, but it would start to veer off in the second and third blocks and eventually exit. Overall penetration was outstanding though. Once I finally managed to catch one, it went 46.5 inches. That's 8 to 10 inches more than the other really premium bonded lead core bullets I just showed you. This Barnes bullet made the smallest wound out of everything I tested in this comparison. Now, while it is the smallest, I don't want to be too hard on it. I'm not going to say it's a small wound. It was still more or less comparable to those made by the other bullets like the A-frame or the bear claw. So what was going on here? Why the smaller wound? Why the deep but also kind of erratic penetration? As you can see, the petals on this bullet peeled very far back. So the end result was the least expansion and the smallest final expanded diameter out of everything I tested. Now that smaller frontal surface area provided less resistance, so the bullet penetrated deeper. It's also not symmetrical expansion either, which is why the bullet kept veering off. Now, I don't want to get down on it, make you think I'm trashing Barnes bullets, because I have had good results with them afield. Now, I mentioned that we used a lot of Hornady DGX bullets on buffalo in South Africa. We actually have two 375s for clients, a 375 H&H and a 375 Ruger. We primarily use DGX bullets in the H&H, primarily Barnes bullets in the Ruger. That's just what each rifle tends to shoot the best, and that's what we can get. Now, we primarily use the 375 H&H on buffalo, but we have killed some, but not as many buffalo, with Barnes bullets from the 375 Ruger. It also worked well, no major complaints here. It is worth noting, though, that these Barnes bullets will sometimes exit buffalo. That is especially true if they lose a petal or two, like we saw a little bit here with this bullet. These bullets won't always exit, but it does happen sometimes. For example, we had a client use the 375 Ruger on a buffalo many years ago. He ended up shooting it something like 6 times in the chest. This is one of those deals where the buffalo was hit hard, it was fatally wounded, and it went down after a couple of shots, but it kept trying to get up, so he kept shooting it. Out of 6 shots through the chest, I think 2, maybe 3 exited that buffalo. So like I said, doesn't happen all the time, but it is more likely to happen with these Barnes bullets compared to everything else in this test. Now, you should always be very cautious about what is behind any animal you are shooting at, but you need to be especially cautious with these bullets. So I'm not sure if I got a bad batch or if this performance is indicative of how they perform at this velocity. Now, for what it is worth, I killed an American bison with a federal factory load for the 375 H&H, shooting these 300 grain TSX bullets from this exact rifle several years ago. Muzzle velocity in that case with that load was about 75 feet per second slower than what I was getting out of this Barnes ammo. The shots were also a little longer on the bison than was the case in this test, and so the bullet also had slowed down some more too. I shot the bison 3 times, at ranges from about 100 to 170 yards. The last shot, which was through the neck, exited. The others were to the chest. Expansion was actually better in that case than what we saw here. Now, that federal load with the Barnes bullet was going a little slower to start out with. The range was also longer, so bullet impact velocity was probably about 200 feet per second slower on the Bison. So it's possible the petals didn't peel as far back, nothing broke off either, because it was going slower when it impacted. So this is one of those deals where we had a larger final expanded diameter at a slower impact velocity like that. Now, Federal no longer makes that factory load with the Barnes bullet, but Barnes themselves offer it in their Safari line for the 375 H&H. Buffalo Bore makes a load for the 375 Ruger with this 300 grain TSX bullet. You can, of course, also hand load it for both cartridges. All right, now let's see how the last load in this test performs. 300 grain North Fork Semi-Spitzer in that custom hand load from Hendershots. Okay, let's see how this bullet did in gel. Very, very short neck. It looks like this bullet starts to expand almost as soon as it goes into the gel. Then we have the meat of the wound cavity between about the 2 and 9 inch marks in the gel. Looks like it peaks around the 3 to 4 inch mark. This is a gigantic wound cavity, one of the biggest I've ever seen. What is even more noteworthy about it is it doesn't look like there's hardly any fragmentation. I'll pull the bullet out and weigh it, and we'll see if any lead got left in there, but I'm not seeing much fragments at all. So we have a very wide, very long wound cavity here. Even though it starts to drop down in size around the 9-10 inch mark, we have what looks like a temporary wound cavity till about the 14 to 15 inch mark in the gel. Then the bullet continues to penetrate, goes into the second gel block in an almost laser straight line, though it does start going downwards a little bit. And then that bullet even makes it into the third gel block and stops there, right about 36 and a half inches of penetration. That looks like a beautiful expanded bullet. Looks like you could almost pull it out of a North Fork advertisement. So I'll pull that out, weigh it, measure it, get you all of the details. So the North Fork has similar penetration to the A-frame. Not quite as much as the Bear Claw, but still excellent overall. This bullet made the largest wound cavity out of everything in this test. It also had the largest final expanded diameter. Now, the North Fork Semi-Spitzer Bonded Soft Point has a bonded front core with a solid rear shank. Now, the Bear Claw and the North Fork are similar, but not exactly the same. They use a different copper alloy in their construction. They have a little bit different bonding process. The North Fork has lots of smaller pressure relief bands, while the Trophy Bonded Bear Claw has a smaller number of larger bands, stuff like that. But all in all, the North Fork has a long, proven track record in Africa. This bullet provides exactly what you want on thick-skinned, dangerous game. Deep, straight-line penetration combined with a large wound inflicted by a bullet with a very large final expanded diameter. That's what we have here. So how does this bullet perform in real life compared to ballistic gel? Good question. Check out my video on the 2025 Big Game Hunting Podcast Safari Hunt for more details, but long story short, one of the guys on that hunt with me killed a buffalo with a .416 Remington Magnum, shooting 400 grain North Fork Semi-Spitzer bullets. His first shot was straight through the heart of that buffalo. We recovered it. That bullet had expanded to a final diameter of 0.835 inches. That is right at 2x expansion. That is right in line with the level of expansion we see here with the 375. So the 375 final diameter is going to be, of course, smaller than the .416 caliber bullet, but both expanded to twice their original diameter. Now, remember when I told you earlier that we were switching from the 300 grain DGX in the 375 in South Africa? Well, we're switching over to the North Fork Semi-Spitzer. Now, for the record, I am an investor in North Fork bullets, but I am an investor because I am such a strong believer in their performance afield. Availability of North Fork bullets has been uneven in recent years, but they are back. They are performing as good as they ever did. Now, the Semi-Spitzer and our other projectiles are available as component bullets for hand loaders from a number of dealers. Most notably, Midway USA and Reloading International stock our bullets. You can also buy directly from the North Fork website. Hendershots, Pendleton Ammo, and Superior Ammo in South Carolina all make custom hand loads with North Fork bullets. These bullets will work for both the 375 Ruger and the 375 H&H. Okay, to recap everything. The 270 grain interlock is fine for antelope, made a massive wound, but not great penetration. I would not hunt buffalo with it, but probably be fantastic on thin-skinned animals like cats, in addition to deer, antelope, and the like. I would hunt buffalo with all of the other bullets. Now, the Barnes had the smallest wound and the least expansion, but the most penetration. The DGX had the least penetration of the tougher bullets in this comparison, but it still did well. The North Fork Semi-Spitzer, Trophy Bonded Bear Claw, and the A-Frame all had very similar penetration, very similar sized wounds, though the Semi-Spitzer made the largest wound out of everything in this test. It also had the largest final expanded diameter. Now, just like the number 100 is greater than the number 99, there's not a tremendous amount of difference between the performance of these premium bullets. So yes, the North Fork made a little bit bigger wound and the Bear Claw penetrated a little bit better, but all three of those bullets are right there in performance with each other. You hand me a rifle with the DGX Bonded, an A-Frame, the Bear Claw, the Barnes, or the North Fork loads to hunt buffalo with, I'd say thanks, and I would go hunting. I prefer the North Fork, followed by the Bear Claw or the A-Frame loads, but they're all fine. I do have to give my normal disclaimer though. Results in clear gel like this do not normally translate one-to-one into real-world situations on game. Bullets tend to penetrate better, but not make as large of a wound cavity in clear gel like this versus a real-life animal. Animals also aren't completely homogeneous like gel is either. So the results in this video should be taken as a general trend. I'm not saying that if a bullet penetrates X number of inches in gel, it will penetrate exactly that far in real animals from every angle, regardless of what it hits. I'm saying that if a bullet demonstrates wide, shallow penetration in gel, it will probably produce wide, shallow penetration in animals. The same is true of narrow, deep penetration, etc. Likewise, if bullet A penetrates deeper than bullet B in gel, it'll probably penetrate better than bullet B in an animal too. So take all of this for what you will. Now, there is a link to where you can purchase all of these different 375 H&H loads in the episode description and in the pinned comment below the video. Let me know your thoughts on this subject. Have you hunted with any of these different 375 loads, either from the 375 Ruger or from the 375 H&H? What have you hunted? Buffalo, plains game, a lion, leopard, whatever. What bullet did you use? How did it perform for you? Leave a comment, let me know. Likewise, leave a comment on this video. Let me know the cartridge bullet combination you would like me to use in the next gel test I publish on YouTube. So far, I have published a bunch of other gel tests. They're all on YouTube in a playlist for you to peruse. I'm open to suggestions from you on what you'd like to see from me in the future. If you enjoyed this video and you want more content along these lines, visit thebiggamehuntingblog.com/ebook. Sign up there to get a free ebook I have written on the best hunting cartridges. That ebook features the 375 H&H along with several other really awesome cartridges I've had great luck hunting with over the years. I've put a link to where you can get that ebook in the video description and in the pinned comment. Check it out. And you'll also start to receive the emails I send out every weekday about hunting, shooting, ballistics, stuff like that after you sign up there. If you like these videos, you will love those emails. Finally, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the like button below the video. That'll do it for this one. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day and good hunting.